So here's my promised video talking about Tankbustas and the battle for the elite slots and why Tankbustas should definitely be reconsidered even in a non-mechanized force, or especially in a non-mechanized force. So I just kind of set up some models here. What we've got is 12 Tankbustas in my usual configuration, which is one tank hammer and the knob with a boss pole. No power claw, just a boss pole. Because unlike the other elite units, the Ludas, the Burnas, Tankbustas have access to a boss pole, so why not use it? And it gives you an extra wound too, so you can avoid taking off a model if you need to. And in front of them I have my screening unit. I'm sure most Ork players play with screening units of some form, but I simply cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have a screening unit. And using Grots as a screening unit is not a bad idea. The problem is your opponent knows it's a screening unit. They know that the Grots are going to be sacrificial. If you use boys, and I usually use a unit of 20 boys, no weapon upgrades, even with the knob, are pretty cheap, and I will use that to screen my 2 units of 30 shooter boys and the 12 Tankbustas. And the idea is to have them absorb any assaults and shooting, and of course the KFF mech will be attached to one of the shooter boy units in the back. So they'll get a 5+ cover save, they'll give a 4+ cover save to anyone behind them. And because they're orcs and they're a true scoring unit, your opponent's not going to ignore them like they might Grots. My Grots are used for other defensive positions. They're used to screen behind Ludas against Wolf Scouts, flanks against Gene Stealers, that kind of thing, where they're much more useful in that role, I think, than being the frontline unit. And they're still Ork boys, so if they don't take the bait, you can use them as Orks. So now on the other side of the table, I lined up a couple Las Razorbacks, which could also be Chimera Bunkers, or anything else similar to that. So let's talk about the Glory Hog rule, and why it's not that big a deal. So I'm going to grab my Ork Codex, flip to page 42. Glory Hogs. Tankbusters live for really big kills. They must always attempt to shoot and/or assault an enemy vehicle if there is one in line of sight, regardless of range. If there is no visible vehicle target, the Tankbusters may select the target as normal. There's still the great misconception out there that Tankbusters must shoot at the closest vehicle. So say we had a Predator, which I just happen to have a couple lying around, as I always do. Let's say we had a Ball Predator slightly ahead of the other 2 units, and your opponent mistakenly thinks that they have to shoot at him because they're closer. It's closer. They don't. They can select any vehicle target, but they must select the vehicle target if there is one in sight. And the other thing, it doesn't affect their moving. They don't have to move towards a vehicle. They can move away from a vehicle. They can move around terrain trying to get out of line of sight. I've done this before. It's not that hard. Especially after taking a couple losses, they can easily hide behind a rhino wreck and be out of line of sight from vehicles, allowing them to shoot at much more or opportune targets. So if they can see a vehicle, they have to shoot at one. So the idea of even being able to kite them around like you can with Death Company is pretty much not true. And with 5th edition, when the Tankbusters really come into their own is when you're playing against a mech spam list like 10 Chimeras or 8 Las Razorbacks. That's when your opponent's not going to move very much. That's what you have to realize, is they don't want to move their vehicles. They want to be able to shoot with their vehicles, which is good for you, because that means if they don't move them around, you have a better chance of getting into them or to shoot at them. So yeah, the Glory Hog rule really, if you're playing the right kind of list, which is what you're going to find on the high end, the Glory Hog rule is going to become a non-factor really quick. So, the screening unit not only gets cover saves, but it's for the assault unit. So say if you have a Land Raider with Assault Terminators coming at you, let it come at you. It's not going to really hurt you that much. Not only the Assault Terminator is going to crash into boys, so even if they chew through your screening unit, it's just no big deal. Let these guys die. Say, roll your KFF saves and call it a day. So when deploying your Tankbusters, you have to remember that they are only 24-inch range, and you want to be able to get at least one good round of shooting first. So you need to put them up as close to the deployment zone edge as possible without being, in the way of the screening units ability to screen them from assault and shooting. This is important because if you hold them back too far, they may not be able to get a round of shooting in the first turn, and they may not get a second chance, depending on if your opponent is threatened by them or not. So deployment of these guys can be quite important. You want them close, but not too close, so they can get full advantage of their relatively short range. This can be a hard arrangement to make sometimes, but it is pretty vital. A smart player will take them out if they get a first volley on their second turn. But hiding them among the horde can sometimes lead to mistakes, because the opponent will just see a sea of boys, not realizing that they're different units. So they might get a out of sight, out of mind situation, which can lead to more turns with them. Especially if you have some speed units like knob bikers or regular bikers or def copters coming up at them, that'll provide a much more immediate threat. That'll take some pressure off your infantry. The biggest problem with Tankbusters is they are elites, and actually the Ork elite slots are very contested. You got Ludas, Burnas, Commandos, Mega Knobs, all fighting for those 3 elite slots. So it might be hard to take Tankbusters over something else. Well, if you're planning on taking 2 units of Ludas, I would definitely consider instead 1 unit of Ludas and 1 unit of Tankbustas. Especially if you're going to a big tournament, because Ludas, while they're awesome, they need to be in cover. And not just in cover, but in area terrain. Because with all the Manticores, Thunderfires, Whirlwinds, well, probably not Whirlwinds, but mainly Manticores out there, and their barrage shooting, just being behind something for cover is not good enough. You need to be in area terrain with your Ludas. And a lot of the major tournaments just don't have enough terrain, let's face it. And maybe even your local game store may not have enough terrain to provide good area terrain for 2 units of Ludas. The Tankbusters will be able to move and stay up with the KFF mech, so they'll always get a cover save no matter what. And Tankbusters are awesome because they have access to the boss pole, which your other elite units don't have, specifically Burners and Ludas. And this can be quite important. I know not everybody uses or likes boss poles, but I do. I use them all the time. I love them, and they work as often enough to make it worth the 5 points. So, to me, a boss pole is important, which and the Ludas not having one is a big downside, and the Tankbusters having one is a big upside. So that's about it for Tankbusters and how we should be using them. Give them a second look if you tried them before and were disappointed. But if you play a lot of static mech armies, give them a second chance. I think it'll be well worth the time and effort to give them a try. Because if they do get a chance to march across that field and they hit that line of vehicles, those Tankbuster bombs are going to rip open the AV-10 like it's not even there. So give them a second look. If you frequently face a wall of Chimera spam or Razor spam, they will work fantastically. If you frequently face Tyranids or Demons, they're kind of overpowered. Thanks for watching.